Hey everyone! Welcome back to our track 2 session. We are going to have our next speaker coming on just in a few minutes. So, today we have with us Dr. Allan Arnette, and Dr. Allan is going to be presenting about eye cancer and a holistic approach to kind of just this diagnosis, treatment, um, how ways you can manage your diagnosis, all of those things. So, a philosopher at heart, Dr. Allan Arnette is driven by a search for truth and meaning in medicine and in life. Currently, he is the owner and director of Park View Health and Wellness Center in Long Beach, California, where he practices a different approach to medical diagnosis and treatment. Holism, which is what he uses, is a philosophical approach to healthcare stemming from observations in the natural world where not one thing exists or operates without its context or environment. It is precisely this broad view that allows the vision of all that is going on with each person to become more meaningful. Following his remarks, we'll have a short Q&A session, so make sure to take notes, ask questions over in the chat, and we just want to go ahead and welcome our favorite holistic doctor, Dr. Allan Arnette, for this session to speak on his holistic approach to eye cancer. So let's go ahead and welcome him to the stage.
Hi, Danae.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thanks so much for inviting me to this great group. This is my third time to present, and I'm really pleased and honored to be here.
Well, I am really excited, like I told you before, to hear from you just because of my own diagnosis with ocular melanoma, and I'm just super interested to hear what you have to say.
Well, I will have a short presentation, and then we'll have time for Q&A, for I also have co-treated some people with ocular melanoma as well. We can have some stories and talk about some specifics as well.
That would be amazing. Thank you so much.
All right, well, I'll go ahead and get going. Let me share my screen here. I have a short presentation and then time for questions and answers. So the holistic perspective is two words that are important. Holistic is coming from the word holism. It used to just be back in the hippie world or in the back of a coffee house that people would talk about such things. And in the reality, when we look at something like genetic predisposition for cancers, it's really the epigenetic factors that we're going to talk about today that this holistic perspective becomes necessary and valuable. So, a little bit about me. I don't look like that anymore, but I think I look cute there, so I keep the picture. I'll get a new one day. My hair's gotten a little bit longer. All right, so I am several things. I consider myself a natural physician who has many techniques. So, I will be speaking from the perspective of the doctor, not from the technician, even though I do things such as functional medicine, acupuncture, herbalism, and chiropractic, to name a few. I have been in business over 3 decades. And I also teach yoga and meditation for more than a decade and a half. And that integrates into our topic today, but is not the main focus. All right, so we're going to review some things. The 4 leading causes of cancer are things everyone knows. This is like a mantra, as if you come to church. All of us by this point could say this: genetics, environment, lifestyle, and stress. But the thing I'd like to start us with this morning is it's not what you know, it's what you remember. It's not what you know, it's what you practice. And it's not what you've know or heard, it's what you stay connected to. This is the center point. If I gave any person going through a difficult medical situation, this is the thing I would blazon on their chest. It's what you remember, it's what you stay connected to. So, as a quick little thing, we see here in 2017 that this abstract, they looked at college kids and wanted to see how could they increase their behaviors that decreased the incidence of cancer. So they were looking here at behaviors, not just thought. And what they found was, in this yellow part, having a higher level of self-efficacy to prevent cancer predicted the engagement in the CPB, which is cancer prevention behaviors. Here in red, increase in knowledge predicted the increase in frequency of the cancer prevention behavior. So it really is knowledge that helps, and that is something that is so important from my perspective. As a basic thing, because most people in this category will be familiar with the simple story, is that we have cells in the body and cells can be injured. This here is a chemical injury. It could have been a radiation injury. It could have been an emotional injury. But here, this gives us a good example of how things tend to go. One thing that happens is the cell could simply die from the injury. One thing is that the cell could repair itself, and that's what we'd like it to do. And the other thing is that that cellular damage could have damaged the DNA, causing genetic proliferations and mutations. And that's where we get the basis of what we now today call a cancer cell, which is a genetic alteration in the cell. It is in these other ways that we can still influence the chemical injury. So when we talk about environmental influences, it's not a foregone conclusion which of these directions it will go. The word genetics is one of my favorite words. It's a new scientific word that basically means holism. It means looking at these pieces of one's life and noticing that they flip on or flip off the genetic switches. So even if you have a predisposition to something genetically, let's say you did some testing, I've got this historical or representation that I could have this thing, even if it's something other than cancer, you do have to have the behaviors in the environment to flip on that switch. This is becoming more and more increasingly real for people as well. So here's one of my favorite slides, and this is from 2008. This year, in 2008, more than 1 million Americans will be diagnosed with cancer, but only 5% to 10% will be attributed to genetic defects. That's a small amount. 90 to 95% have their roots in environment and lifestyle. If we can get to the root of anything, we can start to unravel it within the body. This is a very important part and probably the central thesis of my talk for today. All right, so we've all heard of these most common lifestyle contributors: smoking, overweight and obesity, things that cause cancer such as pathogens, other viruses, bacterial infections, chronic mold, physical inactivity. And here this has to be quite a bit of inactivity. There's slow activity, moderate activity, high activity. We can also, I would add here, from my experience in treating people, add excess activity. Those people who are highly obsessed with exercise and activity and never rest, they actually should be on here as well as causing. Diet can be caused, but notice it's not as big as you might think. And then ultraviolet, particularly important for eye cancers for us to recognize that. All right, I'm not lingering here. These are what I call the mantra. Most people are aware that your food is influential in your chemistry, and it influences that word I brought up earlier called your epigenetic factors. It's what can turn on or turn off the switches. This is not the focus of today's lecture, so I just have a simple little slide: sleep, organic food, which means get the pesticides out; breathe clean air, which means get the pesticides out; play sport. Here it doesn't have to be sport. It just means mostly play, keep your body active. Juicing, we don't need juicing for nutrients. We juice for its medicinal effects with the enzyme activity. So juicing is definitely part of a healthy lifestyle. And drinking more water. Increasingly, this becomes one of the leading causes of cancer amongst my kind of people, which are health-oriented people. It's just hard to keep up with the water every day. All right, a quick slide. Again, this is part of the mantra. Most people know the top anti-cancer vegetables. They're mostly in the cruciferous family. We know its impact upon the glutathione pathways and the liver detoxification, which is instrumental in eye cancer. 2 years ago, when I gave the presentation with Dr. Tara McCannell, she had said that without understanding why, meaning technically why, the most common metastasis of eye is to the liver. The Chinese medicine, Indian medicine, Incan and Mayan medicine all recognize the correlation between the liver and the eyes, not just for cancer, but for health and for vision. This is my topic. This is what I deal with mostly during the day, is help people to identify their sources of stress and to begin reducing it. Stress here can be any type of stress. These are mostly psychological type stresses, but then we also have other types of stress, which we'll go over, such as chemical stress. But what's important is that these symptoms here are something someone might have if they think they're not stressed. Many put together people in their mind aren't stressed, they're just busy, but it's their body that matters, where that accumulation of cortisol and inflammation can start to change the cell and injure the cell. So here, even things like teeth grinding, which is a really big sign that someone's nervous system is in threat mode all night long. Now, apathy is hard because there's a big dose of this in teenagers, and it kind of is something they have to work through. Here, what we mean really more is in the adult, of someone who once had a great zest for life, but now has become changed. Trouble concentrating, that's a loaded one. Depends on the subject. If I'm bored, I won't concentrate. Read humor there. But when we think we should be concentrating and there's a struggle there, that could be a sign that there's stress or hypercortisol, hyperinflammation going on in the brain tissue. All right, other things such as headaches, anxiety, anger. We're referring to here things that are without the patient's control, right? So it's not that someone got angry, that's a stress, it's they stay angry, or people are angry all the time. People are anxious all the time, even when in the moment there's nothing to be anxious about. Anxiety is one of those emotions that both has a psychological corollary as well as a physical corollary. I could give you 40 cups of coffee and make you feel anxious, even though you would not have psychological anxiety. So, anxiety is not always a psychological issue, but it absolutely can turn on the threat mechanisms, keeping people in a high cortisol state, predisposing them to chronic inflammation. All right, so a very quick moment. This is my favorite, so I will insert this here. Acupuncture, to me, when done by a really well-trained and super experienced professional, doesn't have to be Chinese, doesn't have to be American. Any nationality on the planet can be an excellent acupuncturist. There was decades of dedication and a unique to be able to feel what you cannot see. The Tao, which is the center point, is not just a philosophical moment. The Chinese sit down one day and said, let's write a philosophy. They tried to explain life, and in the explaining of life came up with this way. And what this really means is that things find their way in the balance of the two, not in the extremes. So the ancient symbol of the yin yang symbol, Caucasians say yang, like pecan. The Chinese say yang. So yin and yang are opposite, not exist without each other. They have a moment of value here. So please give me about 2 minutes of some maybe seemingly lateral type education, and let's see how this goes. It's a practical philosophy. It's not sit in the coffee shop and pontificate. This is coming from practical reality. It's a lifelong practice varied in healing techniques that stem out of the cultural understanding that energy creates and activates. It creates and activates. Even cellular division is preceded by an electrical polarization. So in the modern world, we can substitute the word energy with electricity, especially for those people that are more engineer types and struggle with the old-fashioned language, which may sound poetic. And I really respect that. But energy in the body is electricity, so that could be a nice overlay for you. And then lastly, the human body is made up out of elements. In our body, we have minerals, we have water, we have metabolism of fire, we have oxygen, and the ancients called that wind and fire and earth and water. And these elements are alive. They expand and they contract, just like your lungs, just like your heart. But we've noticed when we study the brain that the brain shrinks and swells throughout a 24-hour period, as does our waistline up to 2.5 pounds per day. It is believed and seen in the clinical, it is the balance between these expansion and contraction that create life. In either, life dies. So we don't want to be expanded or contracted. We always want that balance, that dynamic balance between the two. This is why when we get afraid from a cancer diagnosis, we've got to bring down those fears as best as possible over a series of weeks and a series of talks to help create some more mental balance within the patient. All right, so this is what's interesting. I'm going to have a moment of practicality for all of you listeners out there today. Mai is Chinese word for meridian or channel. Keep in mind that Western science has not yet have a hardcore visual of the meridians. We only have 5,000 years of people experiencing it, and that today doesn't have enough value. We want to see it. We're getting better with photographies, with thermographs, and various things to start to see this elusive meridian. But at this point, it is not your nerves, although your nerves are involved. It is not simply an organ, though your organs are involved. If you've ever had acupuncture and they put a needle in and you feel anything elsewhere, you have felt your meridian. And in today's presentation, we'll call that Mai, M-A-I, Chinese for meridian. All right, the ones that are the most important for the eye actually end at the feet, and I'll have that in just a moment. So this is not, you will not be required to memorize this, but the stomach meridian or the stomach Mai begins right here below the eye. You can see ST1 means stomach 1, and it begins right here. This is why so many eye problems have their basis in the digestive system. And you can see that this meridian here goes all the way down the abdomen, down the thigh, all the way down the calf, and down to the second toe. So if we even touch the second toe, we in a way are affecting the eye. And this becomes very important, not only just for treatment from a professional, but for self-care as well. The gallbladder is the same, except it's on the side of the body. They have VB, this was a German picture. Gallbladder 1 begins on the outer eye. It bounces around the skull. This is where a lot of migraines are held. This main point at the base of the skull, right behind the ear, is huge for acupressure, and we'll talk about that point in just a moment. But as you can see, the meridian continues down the side of the body. These are liver points. And then here we get into some myofascial points, such as your IT band and the tensor fascia lata, and even the glutes. We can see tension here affecting the eye. I've had those cases in my career. And this ends all the way at the bottom of the foot. The last one that I will mention today is the urinary bladder or dashong. This begins right here, V1, in the eye, on the front of the body, and it goes up over the head and comes back down. It is the dominant one for the back of the body, connecting low back pain with your eye, connecting butt pain or sacral pain, or even gynecological pain with the eye. But as we continue down here, we can see that even the hamstrings and the calf muscles may hold energy relation to the eye, and it too ends at the pinky. So the head meridians, as you can see here, there's just a ton of points. Now, this isn't an acupuncture lecture, so what you want to take away from this, or what I'd like to guide you to, is just how much energy goes from the body up to the head. For while we don't hardcore know the cause of eye cancer, one of the things we do see is that it tends to come from somewhere else, either as a cancer metastasis or as an origin. And this begins to help us understand the connection between the eye and the rest of the body, going back to my opening statement that this is a holistic perspective, looking at how the body functions as contributing to eye health and the reversal of eye cancer. This is simply an example of how the back meridians, and you can see with the little ribs here, every organ is right here. This is where the liver, the gallbladder, the stomach, the kidneys, the pancreas, all of this lie. The large intestine, small intestine, and down here, the uterus in the woman, and of course the prostate in males. All of this is influenced right here by this same meridian that starts in the eye. And then these are just a picture of the toe, so you can see it a little bit closer. The ST is stomach, it ends on the toe. GB is gallbladder, ends on the toe. And B is bladder, ends on the toe. We didn't go over these, but this stands for spleen and liver, the most common corollary with eye cancer, all on the toes, on the feet. So the thing I'd like to do, it's our little home style today, is to leave this part of the lecture with this presentation. You can see that the red dots are all around the eye. We have the inner canthus. If you take your finger, a clean finger please, and no fingernails, if you want to shut your eyes you can, or just watch me once and do this later. It's a gentle pressure up into the eye, and you see the angle of my fingers are about 45 degrees. If I were at home, I'd close my eyes, take a breath, and relax my shoulders so that the pressure of the fingers was not forced, but gentle. Hold it for a few seconds, and then release it. There are many ways to stimulate it. This is going to be my suggestion for today. We can do that with the inner eyebrow. You can feel there's a little divot of the bone right there where a nerve comes out. Right in the middle of the eyebrow, you'll feel another divot where a nerve underneath the skin comes out. The tip of the eyebrow ends inside the little fossa. You'll feel your fingers fall into the bone right here, into the soft part of the temple, and it's right at the end of the eyebrow. Next point is right at the end of the eye in that soft part. There's a muscle right here called your temporalis, and there's a little muscular fossa where there's a little bit of a depth, and these 2 points are in that. Continuing down, this is inside the orbit, underneath the eye. If we were in China and didn't have the governing body of the AMA, we would be needling these points inside the socket. Very effective, but we're not allowed to in this country. And then right smack dab underneath the eye is that stomach 1. Now, we can needle the skin in America, but we can't really thread through up under the eye. That can be effective for certain types of migraines and cluster headaches. The point of this slide here is to give you some self-pressure points. It's not just rubbing your eyes. All of these points are potential. Now, what's unique is you. So when you press all these points, you may find some more valuable than others. Don't feel the need to use all the points, except in the exploration phase. Go ahead and reuse the ones that are important. So let me remind you then of the simple technique. Imagine you're at work. Imagine you're stopped at a stoplight of a car and you have about 10 to 20 seconds to try to make your eyes feel better. close the eyes, and start to rub one of the points. Now, rubbing is not pressure point. This isn't trying to work out a knot. The rub is really more sending energy from your body to the eye. That's why we relax the shoulders so that we don't get tension, but relaxing here and just simply kind of hold or gently move in circles a few seconds, maybe 5, and then move to the next one. Of course, we could make this a full hour-long session, but I'm trying to give you something you might even have today during your webinar. Maybe between the 5-minute break, you could close your eyes and quickly do a few points. If you add breathing to that, just simple breathing, you'll get even more effects. All right, so the most common pressure point going back and forth is one at the very base of the skull. Your skull bone behind your ear has a little dip. That's called the mastoid. If you'll go just behind that, your finger falls into a natural divot. And it's a large area, about that big, so there's several points within that. And frequently when that's tender, it shoots pain straight to the eye. Vice versa. You might feel when you're touching the eye, it sends pressure there. In the chiropractic literature, 86% of dizziness and eye pressure is coming from the neck. That's a significant amount. So anyone who's going through eye challenge, from just simple eye pressure or discomfort all the way through up to cancers, we need to recede the pressure that goes up into the eye. One of the things that these methods treat very successfully is ocular pressure, which of course is a concern no matter what the condition is, but particularly as someone's going through eye cancer, to keep the pressure moderate or low. And they have medicines that can do that, but if we can help from the inside, we use less medicine and maybe prevent that particular medicine. I've had a lot of success with this. So pressure is what builds up when we put our attention through our eyes. So right now, as I'm looking at you, it's not painful, but I feel more energy in my face and my eyes than I do, say, in my toes or in my abdomen at this moment. This is why if we want to reverse the direction of energy, we need to first close the eyes and then take a breath and imagine that things are moving down the pathways. You don't have to have those meridians memorized. Just remember, they went down the front of the body, the side of the body, the back of the body. Let me just breathe, feel the exhale, maybe do a point around the eye itself or a little point behind the skull. And then blink the eyes open and we can be refreshed. Remember that the dentist said it is better to brush your teeth 2 minutes 3 times a day than 1 hour on Saturday, because life builds up in the meantime and you couldn't do as good a job even if you spent longer time. It is the same for tension and stress. Tension and stress accumulate every single day, even from just standing in a gravitational field. Self-care in America is becoming bigger, but we still only apply it when we have pain. Well, we don't have a sophisticated system. We have pain, no pain. So if you wait till you have pain, it could be too late. So you really want to start practicing clearing the field, clearing the pressures, receding your energy and attention back down into your body every day, maybe even twice a day. All right, just a few words. We won't be long here, and then we'll open for questions and answers. Actor itself is needles. Needles are metal because that way they conduct electricity or electrons. Electrons, and that's what we call moving energy. Energy can also be electricity. When energy moves, that moves the chemistry, and when chemistry moves, it makes energy, yin and yang. These are words that sound so generic in the complexity of medical science, but listen to how simple these words are. Redirecting misdirection. That means that we're moving energy and it's going in the wrong way. We're going to redirect it now to the right area. That's what happens when you apply pressure. Instead of it moving to the eye, now it can move back down. You're redirecting. Stimulating deficiencies, something that's weak or points or segments or part of the body that are low in circulation, maybe they're congested by inflammation. We want to start to stimulate the deficiencies. Anything that's too much, like if there's pressure in the eye or pain in the eye or headache, that we need to reduce that. That's called excess, and bring that down. This helps medicines to work better, reduction of inflammation, and those epigenetic factors that really can advance or unadvance your condition. And of course, building strength. Strength comes from the release of excess tension. This is a short slide to show how little and thin an acupuncture needle is in relation to, say, a sewing needle or a hypodermic needle or even a match. Some people are scared of these needles unnecessarily. This is a great fun shot. These are water buffalo horns that are empty, and they create a suction and apply them to the body to move circulation. This is more what you'll see in America, certainly what you'll see in the clinic. These are called fire cups. They use fire to suction the oxygen out of the glass ball, the body, and creates a suction to move circulation. Here, along that urinary bladder meridian, and this treatment would be good for your eyes. Herbal medicine is a big one. This is Chinese, could be any herbal medicine. These are just a few pictures. This usually warms people's hearts as we see a bit of nature here. The Chinese believe that humans extend from nature, and therefore nature is necessary for healing. The human mind that believe that we are set here by some alien force and are able to consume the planet at our will and are therefore not subject to the laws of nature. I'm not in that camp or that religion, but many people believe that and think herbs are the enemy. So, it's almost a political issue. This is my pictures from China. These are my pictures when I studied in the hospitals many times of what happens to a patient prescribed herbs. This is a week's worth of herbs. Each batch would last one day. This is them filling the herbs in the pharmacy in China. This hospital, I think, was in Shanghai. And the earth, here we're using water and heat or fire to pull the extract out of the plants, which are earth. So this is an earth, water, fire formula, and earth, water, and fire elements are in the abdomen. So this has the most specific metabolic enhancement. All right. So the last thing I want to say is very conceptual. We are made up of layers as an individual physical body. By the time something such as an eye cancer, it has been in the process for some time. And here what we're beginning to see is that we're made up of a physical body. Inside that is our mental body. And the deepest core of that is this elusive, we call that the subjective self, the universal consciousness, or the soul. The word Atman is Indian, that comes from yoga, Hindu, and Buddhism. And what this means is that in all of us are all of these parts. And many times the objective sign has had its origin in the mind or in our soul's compression for a long time before it expresses. All right, so our mask of personality is what we run into when we get diagnosed. The personality is made up of likes and dislikes. I don't like carrots. Oh, I'll eat that. I won't do that. I don't like this. This scares me. Those are real things, but they're not permanent, and they do change. Talk to anyone who's been through a big scare like cancer, and they'll tell you they're different as a result. And this image here, the mask of your personality, is not who you are. It is a temporary construct of your current likes and dislikes, everything that gets in the way of success in most cases. You are actually made up of little drops of water that are part of a large water. And as this picture shows, it is the physics of water or the energy moving through the water that creates the ripples. So it is our combination of water and energy that bring about our mentality, our health, our chemistry. And while these are conceptual thoughts here, they are speaking to the symbolic nature of consciousness and imprint and plant seeds in a far deeper way than specificity does. This is a abstract picture of your nervous system. All the electricity that flows through your body has to be metabolized, and it too has waste products. If we keep our stresses inside, or we anger response because it was appropriate but never let it out, these pathways right here become so congested that they too become part of a causation of turning on epigenetic switches, and particularly true in eye cancer because it's a separate organ, it's nerve tissue. And when electricity gets caught up in here, when pressures get caught up in here, either in the eye, behind the eye, or in the neck, it definitely can mess up and start to change how the cells that are injured repair. So this symbol of yin and yang is far more than just some hippie image from the 60s. It represents the basic fundamental nature of life. And when used in a clinical setting can be very helpful, for it also could indicate pharmaceutical medicine and natural medicine working hand in hand. I'm not here as a separate unity, but my voice is in the natural medicines, and as that board of directors, you want me to be strong in this particular perspective. So that's it for me. I do have a cleanse coming up. For those of you that want to tap into me, it's all online. It is a 21-day process to use basic foods and some herbs to clean out our liver, our gallbladder, our bowel. It is not a fast. It is not a juice fast. It's whole food. It's not keto, but it can be keto towards the end. If you'd like more information, please feel free to call that number up front, which is my office. Feel free to reach out to me through an email. It does begin on Monday, but they will be recorded if you don't get your act together until midweek. All right, so now that's all I have for today. I'd like to go through and open up for some questions.
All right. Well, thank you, Dr. Arnette. I felt like this was really, really helpful. I am seeing a few of the questions coming in. So give me just a sec.
Okay, so what is the best point to reduce? I'll start with these. I see one from
Yeah, I
Vicky.
feel like you see one right
Vicky
there.
has
So go
asked,
ahead.
what is the best point to reduce eye pressure? Okay. If I had to say one thing, the best point to reduce eye pressure is breathing. It is the central core pressure that causes pressure to focus up. Different people have different pressure points based on their personality. So there's no single point that is more better than the other point. In an abstract academic setting, the central core pressure is relaxed and mediated by the breath and the relaxation. So any of those points that I showed in that previous picture, what I'd like you to do is close your eyes, take a few minutes, and try out each of those points, and you will find which points are more sensitive and thus effective for you. But if you put a gun to my head and you make me say a point, I'll say the one behind the head that relates to the neck. Hope that was enough of an answer there. We'll move on. DS has asked, do I have protocols that help with eye cancer, points herbs? The protocols that I have are primarily in the order of detoxing their lifestyle and their body at first. And that means I've taken a history to find out what needs detox. Not everyone needs the exact same kind of detox. Fundamentally, then, whether they're then going through chemotherapy or are choosing to try to prevent it, which is a personal choice, regardless, the most important part of that protocol is their breath and their stretching practice. For the thing I'm bringing to the meeting today is less about the chemistry, the specificity of chemistry, and more about the things that people tend to go, yeah, that's important, but not get to, such as the breath, the relaxation, and the gentle stretching. Excessive physical activity, such as hard athletic Ashtanga yoga, may be hard on the eye pressure. So I'm talking about not even yin yoga, just a gentle flow to stretch the neck, to stretch the mid-back, along with the right kind of diagnosis. But there isn't a standard. That's the challenge. Standard is detox of the liver. Let's see, what are my thoughts on the Gerson therapy? The Gerson therapy, as I have it memorized in my head, is primarily centered around detoxification of the liver. It's heavily involving different types of juices. It's famous for its carrot juice. I can speak from clinical, extremely effective, particularly for the eye. There is something about carrot juice, we could dissect that all day long, that really has a strong affinity for the liver and for purifying the liver. I know that's a non-specific term to you chemists out there, but go with me, please. Whether it's the retinol or whether it's the beta-carotene or whether it's the live enzymes, carrot seems to be super helpful. But in clinic, I don't rely only on carrot. I also use other things such as beet, dandelion greens. I like romaine, and I like the cruciferous. All of those are fabulous in juices. If somebody wanted to do it, what I would recommend is 1, 2, or 3 days of eating lightly so that yourself get easier on the caloric intake. Do 1, 2, or 3 days of juices throughout the day, nourishing since I've just recommended. 3 days slowly eating back out. Now that's a self-guided cleanse. It's in a generic sense for you out there who are listening. The professional would rather talk to you and guide you through something so that it's the right one for you. But in general, that's what I would recommend. Let's see here. Where can I follow you for the cleanse? I missed it on my screen. My business and website is parkviewwellness.com, spelled just like that, 2 W's, 2 L's, and 2 N's. And that has my office number. Just give a call and we'll get you all signed up. No problem. It's all electronic and all on. Won't miss anything. And everything's recorded, so you'll have a leave behind if you can't make it. Thanks so much, Barbara, for asking that question.
Okay,
Go ahead.
I don't see any other questions over here in the chat, but we do have a couple other ones coming in from a different source. So we have a question: do you consult by phone? I'm not currently in
Oh, yes.
California.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay, I
I
think
consult by phone or telemedicine. I prefer to see you so I can see skin color, see your tongue, but I can do phone as well. You bet. All set up for that.
okay. I'm trying to make sure that I'm not missing any of them. One of these questions is my doctor. I'm assuming you're saying your general doctor or your oncologist is not a fan of holistic medicine. How do I get him on board or her?
Well, the thing, father just passed away cancer last year, so I had the personal experience of walking through that. They're in Texas, so my mom is still in Texas. I was medical care, an absolute, complete disbelief of anything else that could contribute. It's interesting that when my father would go into the hospital, which he did a lot, he was allowed to eat things such as barbecue sandwiches, tapioca pudding, and Pepsi, but he could not bring fresh fruit in, for there was a big sign, fresh fruit will kill cancer, while they had styrofoam cups and stale coffee in the waiting room. So there oftentimes is this gigantic disconnect between the epigenetic factors. So that's the word I would use with a physician that you're trying to both be friendly with, but introduce to them things that you may be doing they don't approve of, is say, I'm going to attempt to affect my epigenetic factors by including diet and lifestyle. Would you like me just doing, or would you prefer I keep it to myself? It's a respectful way to talk to a physician in today's world. My father's physician said, yeah, great, you can do whatever you want, but it won't, because that was his experience. As a quick side note, this is a funny story. So the moment my father was half diagnosed, I put him on the right kind of diet. Into it, my mom, who was stressed that her husband may die, was couldn't handle the stress eating these clean foods. She herself was struggling with stress and wanted to have something celebratory. So she asked the physician, our son wants us to eat a healthy diet. What do you think? And he said, with the certainty of the hospital, food did not cause your cancer, sir, and food will not heal. Eat anything you want. So 2 weeks later, my dad calls and says, son, my stomach's upset since I've been eating steak and martinis again. So why don't you try the foods I recommended? He called me in 2 weeks and said, wow, what a difference. It turns out I have to eat for my stomach. Drum roll, please. Now jump to 3 weeks before my father ultimately passed from leukemia. The doctor tapped, sir, you have outlasted by significant amounts of time, more than 18 months, your expected survival rate with the cancer you had. Maybe that food thing you do with your son did something. So that was the conference from the doctors that don't recommend it. So if you're working with a physician who's struggling, just use the word epigenetic factors of lifestyle and diet that you will be adding, and then ask, would you like me to keep you abreast or not? Because that way we can build a positive energy with the set of oncologists to be using.
That
I
makes
hope that was
sense.
helpful.
So I guess as far as that goes as well, like when I think about this, I think it tends to be kind of tricky. And I was talking with one of my friends, and we were just kind of we've expressed this before too, but we both kind of going back to the causes of cancer, but also relating to management and treatment after you've been diagnosed. But it can sometimes feel pretty frustrating as a patient who lives a healthy lifestyle and who, to the best of their knowledge, eats healthy, exercises regularly, does all these different things, but then yet still ends up with this kind of a diagnosis, right? And to then, be told, well, one of the leading causes of cancer can be your food, but then we have to, I feel like, allow for um, obviously the environment and stress and just other areas of the factors that can come into play when getting diagnosed with something like ocular melanoma, which, as far as I understand, we still don't have a concrete cause of, well, we know this causes ocular melanoma every single time. Like, we don't have something like that we can fall back on. So we're really just kind of working in the realms of guesswork here, trying to understand it. And that means asking questions. That means sometimes we're going to be right. Sometimes we're going to be a little bit off. And sometimes what's right for one person isn't right for everybody else.
Correct.
Um, and, but what would you say to a patient though, who feels frustrated by that idea that, they've done everything, they've lived a healthy lifestyle and they still got cancer. And they then, still try to, but they kind of feel like, well, what's the point? Like, I already
Mm,
ate
mm.
healthy and I still got cancer. So what's the point of me eating healthy now? I'd rather just, enjoy all, like you said, enjoy all the martinis and the steaks and the cake and the cookies and all those fun foods. And I think you've kind of already answered this, but I wanted to just give you the opportunity to answer it again, in a little bit
Well,
different kind of
it's really
function.
a great question, I have to say, because it's really the central thesis of kind of this side of the story. If I can prevent it and I take these action steps and it doesn't prevent it, does that make all those action steps mute or null and void? Um, it can feel like someone got jilted if they've been eating a good diet and suddenly get some type of cancer that may have been involving the diet. To that deeper, to see hidden food sensitivities, microbiome dysbiosis, we can see for hidden molds or yeast infections. For someone maybe eating a good diet, but it may be inadvertently feeding something in them that's not helpful. So there is, through functional medicine, a great deal of deep diving deeper into the potential causes of why food may or may not be working towards someone. Number two, what is a healthy diet? Really, it's the diet for that individual body. While I'm not big on genetic testing, one of the things I predict the future will be is when the baby comes out, they'll do a quick little prick and tell the mom what diet is right for that child. We have so many food sensitivities that are not necessarily allergies, but they cause a going on that we could be eating the best foods on the planet. But if it's not agreeing with us, and I don't mean overtly, you would know if it bothered your stomach, but I'm talking
Mhm.
about co-creating inflammations, then that does make it difficult. And quite frankly, that's my daily job. That's one of the key things that I do is to try to tailor and take a shirt and then try to cut and fit it to the patient. Otherwise, that patient may not have as good a results as they're looking for. The second statement is going back to that opening cell picture where you had a cell that was injured and there were three pathways it could go. Well, even if you have a few cancer cells and now we have found it, you don't want more. And you also need your body's other cells to not be producing cancer cells. Off of a healthy approach to supporting the life would be a mental response of like you've been broken up and now you're just upset, which makes sense. This is where I come in. This is a big part of my co-treatment of people going through the cancer experience is this kind of mental emotional support, not just psychological, but really psychonutritional, you could
Mhm.
say, to try to help them find their way. Because I'm not saying that if you eat the right diet, you will entirely prevent cancer. What I can say is that if you eat the right diet for yourself, you will have less of the conversion into the DNA replication in the wrong way through mutations and more of the cell repairing itself. In fact, there are movements in the cancer philosophical world away from the genetic cause of cancer only and looking at mitochondrial dysfunction through the reactive oxygen species that are damaging the DNA. And the thing that all cells seem to have in common, cancer cells, is that they have damage to the mitochondria. Well, that speaks much more to diet and lifestyle in terms of mitochondrial repair than simply just using things that are out of our control other than pharmaceuticals.
Oh, I feel like that totally makes sense.
So really,
Um,
it is. So go ahead, please.
oh, I just was gonna say, so I think what makes sense to me, and I'm not perfect. I don't think any of us are,
Nope.
as far as eating super super healthy and always eating organic, or whatever those kinds of areas of lifestyle and food are. But I can say that I do know for my body that I feel better when I eat well. And at the end of the day, my goal is to live my life feeling my best. And whether that means that I live my life and, like you said, there's underlying things going on, and because I'm learning how or linking up with a holistic nutritionist who can help me to have something very specific for my body type or for what my body has going on under the surface, to make sure that I'm basically feeding my body the best way that I can and
Right.
giving it more of an opportunity to repair cells than to create more damage or to feed the cancer cells. I
Bingo.
would rather, at the end of the day, just at the very, baseline, like super basic everything, I would rather just know that I'm feeding my body and feeling good, because I want to be able to have energy. I want to be able to feel my best and, just handle life. I guess just have the energy that I want to do the things that I want to do in life. And I can't do that if I'm feeding my body like crap.
That's right. At least not for very long. So going back to my father's story, he ate a week or two of steak and martinis, so he got his emotional get out of jail free card. but then his stomach hurt. And when he simply said, that's not tolerable, and ate to make his stomach feel better, 2 years later, the oncologist says, you've outlived everybody else in that particular diagnosis in that age range. So it was a corollary that wasn't causation, but it is in this way that we start to see that cancer is really more of a chronic condition. Almost everyone on the planet is predisposed to something, either autoimmune or cancer in some way. So to think that our genes are the whole story leaves us in fear because we can't control the gene. And this is why it's more important than anything to recognize that all genetic changes occurred through behavior first. If you think your blood pressure problem came from your great-great-great-grandmother, she was stressed about something. She changed it into blood pressure and possibly passed it on. So when we see things in the genes, somebody changed that behavior. Something changed that. We are more malleable than we know. The most important thing to take away from my talk today is the influence of what you have to change the course of your life.
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say, is that this is about empowering us.
Yes.
And just recognizing if this was not in our control, right, that it got turned on, right? This gene got turned on that said, you now have eye cancer. It's in your eye. It's growing. Something changed and it was outside of our control. We don't really know exactly what caused it. But what you're saying is that we do have the control to, at the very least, try to turn it off and to kind of like help our bodies heal themselves from the inside out. But, and I think that the hard thing is that, and maybe you can understand this or relate to this, is that we want certainty. We want a solid answer that says, this is your cure. This is what you need to do. This is A, B, C, and D, and it's always going to work every single time. So as human beings, we want that certainty. We don't want to be stuck in the unknown anymore, because that's like our constant life right now with a cancer diagnosis. We don't like it. It's stressful to us to feel that uncertainty. But I think that if we can just recognize that all of this in general, like, I mean, our whole lives, I think, are just a huge experiment. And we're just living out the experiment, and we have to be willing to be okay to try some things and see if they work, see if they help us feel better just on a day-to-day. And then if the natural byproduct of that is that, yes, maybe one day down the road, things improve for us, or that if we have metastatic disease and it helps us to manage our metastatic disease better, why not, right? Why not feel better? Why not have that as your baseline reason for pursuing something like this? Because I feel like at the end of the day, that's what matters.
It really does. The thing around what you just, our nervous system leads to every thought we have. And if you have the similar thought for very long, will manifest the chemistry that supports that thought. We call that chemistry change emotion. If someone lives in fear because they want certainty and the certainty isn't there, they actually are co-exaggerating cancer. Guaranteed. See, when our body is in a state of threat, it's ready to be or to outrun. Those are short periods. They're highly expensive chemically, and they are very acidic and pro-inflammatory. So for us to have the answer, I need to have the answer for very long. Even if that's what we think we need, we actually are co-contributing to the demise. This is why giving people things they can do at home, directions that they can take help, so that they can start to feel better. That feeling better means emotionally, or even for the moment feeling better, that means the chemistry is matching that.
Okay, that for sure makes sense.
Yeah, it's very real.
And I definitely believe that. I think it's kind of finding that fine line between the balance of validating and owning and just feeling your emotions, because I feel like stifling and stuffing back our emotions is not healthy either, but at the same time not living in that stressful space for too long, because like you said, that creates all of that negative energy that we don't want to feed ourselves, that negative energy. We do have, I think, 2 short real fast questions, and then we do need to wrap up. One person says, I'm unable to meditate. I keep trying, but my mind won't stop. Help.
Well, that is the most common thing that I hear, both as an acupuncturist, a yoga instructor. So first of all, know that you are welcomed and that there's nothing wrong with you for having that experience. To keep it simple, and I won't turn this into a long lecture, that means that you yourself have lost connection with who you are and your thought. This is the most common human condition. The oldest line ever written down by human beings 5,000 to 6,000 years ago in the ancient Vedas said, man tends to confuse himself with his thoughts, and without checking in, suffering. It did not say the thought was good or bad. It just said if you don't check in, then you run amok with whatever arises.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we start to meditate, the first thing we have is a big dose of patience for the busyness and let ourselves start back. So a mapping model at Christmas and there's tons of noise going on, but you and your friend can still get through that evening and enjoy being at the mall. That's meditation. Let the noise be and just sit and breathe. And when it distracts you, say, oh, I'm over here. Set a timer for 10 minutes, see how it goes. I do offer online meditation, not trying to sell that, but if you're really interested, I can talk to you more about that. But it's very
Okay, for
normal
sure.
to have a busy mind.
I know. I'm one of those people with an active mind, and the one thing that I've liked from listening to various different meditation instructors is that meditation is a practice. And that means you show up to it and you just do your best. And it doesn't mean that you're never going to have
That's
thoughts.
right.
It
That's right.
like you said, it's about noticing those thoughts.
Same for
We
cancer.
do have one last question about whether you recommend circulating tumor cell testing.
Circulating tumor cell testing, if we're looking for a potential for metastasis, I don't not recommend it. I like investigations if they're not overly dangerous to the body. It really gives us a bit more information. Sometimes the fed to the pharmacy side of the mind, and some of it's fed to the nutraceutical lifestyle side of the mind. So it could be very helpful in either way. There are so many advances that are occurring. The main thing that I bring to this party is that the story tends to stay in the chemical realm, cancer.
Mm-hmm.
And what realm we're missing these other components that even we give lip service to. So if I have strength to help people to turn down cancers, to make it much more chronic and more lifestyle manageable, or even turn it off, it's in addition to whatever chemistry, nutraceuticals or herbs you put, but it's also what leaves you and what your energetic or electrical state of your nervous system. If you live in a perpetual state of threat, the inevitability is early death. Something.
Yes, that totally makes sense. I
Correct.
appreciate you, and I feel like that was all the questions that I am seeing. We did get a little bit of disconnect there. So, just to reiterate from what Dr. Arnett said, is that as far as the circulating tumor cell testing goes, he said this was a non-invasive kind of a test, and
If
that
it was
this would be.
non-invasive, it should be.
Say that again.
I said if it was. I don't really highly recommend from my side a bunch of tests that are heavily potential danger. So if it's just a simple blood test or a screen or checking in with a doctor, see, I think some
Okay.
of those things can
So
be very helpful.
if it's a simple something like a simple blood test, something that just basically is
Yeah,
giving us more information, then yes, why not? This is the kind of thing that it's never going to hurt to have that information. Kind of similar to like the biopsies for our tumor, like it's not going to hurt us to have information.
correct. And that's good. And I'm very much an advocate of the team.
Okay. Well, Dr. Arnett, thank you so much for being with us. And we are just really appreciative of everything that you have had here. And we want to go ahead and just say goodbye, and we will let you get back to the rest of your day.
Well, thank you so much. As always, it's been a pleasure. I look forward to what we have for next year during our conference. And just a reminder for those of you who'd like to, my cleanse does start on Monday. Please contact me if you want more. Thank you to everyone involved in this beautiful, amazing group. I'm appreciative to be part of it.
Thank you so much for being here again.
Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.